start off with a little bit about me. So this is my first semester being in the A&D program. I auditioned last semester, now I'm here. This is my second semester here at Pierce for music. I've been at Pierce a few years back, but I was taking music classes. So this is my second semester here actually doing music. And I've been playing trumpet for 14 years, which is kind of a long time. That's my first year in middle school. And actually I learned under Professor Espinoza here. His dad taught at the middle school where I learned to play trumpet. So that's a cool fun fact. For piano, I also play piano, but most of that is self-taught stuff. I've only actually taken piano classes here. I was starting last semester with Dr. Ju. But I've been doing that on my own for a few years. And as for writing music, I wrote my first song in my senior year of high school, which was 2018. And ever since then, I've been writing stuff a little off and on, but I think this is my first time actually committing a lot of time to writing music. All right. So some musical influences, there's kind of a lot, but I'm not going to say that. Everyone has a lot of musical influences, so I'm not going to go over all of them. But most of the stuff that's you listen to in the radio is stuff that's before the turn of the century. I listen to Aerosmith, Van Halen, Radiohead, mostly rock stuff, Nirvana, mostly rock stuff. There's some pop, some jazz, some Prince, some stuff like that. And then I also listen to, at home, I listen to a lot of video game soundtracks. That's where I really get a lot of inspiration for writing, is from video game soundtracks. I listen to some 8-bit soundtracks, stuff like Undertale, Celeste, stuff like that, jazz, there's stuff like Cuphead, and then orchestral soundtracks, stuff like Metal Gear, stuff like God of War, stuff with a lot of orchestral stuff, all kinds of things. And then for classical music, I listen to mainly stuff that I would learn in school, stuff that we play in band. I'd be like, wow, that sounds really cool. I'm going to listen to, because we just played fourth flute, I'm going to listen to the whole thing. So stuff like Gustav Holst, stuff like Dvorak, stuff like Mussorgsky. I don't listen to a lot of classical music, but those are a few ones I do listen to. All right, so as for stuff that works in with lessons with Dr. Ju, the first thing I wrote was a short percussion piece. It wasn't very long. It was basically, he gave me the assignment that you can't use any notes, which I'm not a trumpet player. That's kind of lame. So the idea is to only do rhythms. So I used some polyrhythms, which is basically when you have a separation of 3 and a separation of 4, which sounds something like this. It goes something like that. And it had to be something I could perform, and I'm not a professional. So it was mainly just for clapping, snapping, and for snare drum, because I think I could get my way around. And there was a kind of melody, but it wasn't, traditional melody, because it's just rhythm, there's no notes. So that was the first thing that we did with the semester. That's the notes. All right, the next thing is that we went over using Sibelius. So previously when I write music, I use this free online program called NoFlight, which there's a paid version, I only use the free version, and it is very user-friendly, but it also is not very professional. And it's also, there's not a whole lot you can do with it. You have to pay if you want to have multi-measure reps. So it's that kind of thing. And there's not a whole lot you can do with it, but it is what kind of easy to use. So Sibelius was a big step up from that. And it's very complicated to use. If you do something the wrong way, it'll be like, no, you can't do that. But when you actually get used to it, there's a lot you can do with it. And so it's a lot more professional, and there's more stuff you can do with it. So it is a hard step, but it's a necessary step for writing music. Oh, there we go. All right, so now we're going to talk about a piece that I wrote. It is called A Moonlit Walk Home. And the idea is that normally, I would assume 90% of people in this room know music theory. But when you have a major chord, and you want to go do a minor chord, you just lower the third. And so I just took the idea of what if instead of lowering the third stays the same, and everything else goes down. And then eventually, that's the main idea for how the piece started. And it gave kind of, it gave kind of a spooky vibe, and I was kind of leaned into with the melody and stuff like that. So as for the instrumentation, it's the same as Donald's and Sam's. We have piano, we have cello, we have sax. For mine, it is tenor sax, but then it will be alto sax. But tenor sax and trumpet. And so the piano will is the only instrument that will play by itself at points. It generally has an idea that other instruments will build off on, and then when these other instruments come on, they'll flesh it out, and then the piano will like sort of lean back and be accompaniment. And then the trumpet is the highest voice, because cello and tenor are kind of lower ranges. So trumpet has the highest voice. Usually they'll have the melody, not always. And then the cello and the tenor are the lower voices, so they will take over the melody a lot, but a lot of the time they're just harmonizing with the melody. All right, so speaking of harmony, this is the beginning of the piece. We don't know where the end bit, but like the first bit is just what the harmony looks like a lot of the time. It's a lot of just the minor one to, it goes from D minor to D flat major, back to D minor, and eventually there will be other chords, but it starts off with that. And at first it's just minor triad to major triad, and then later it goes to minor seventh. If I can remember how to play piano. To a major seventh. And again, notice the normally move. These two normally move, they stay the same, while the ones that normally stay the same move. And eventually there are different chords, not just those two chords the whole time, but that is the general idea. And then the thematic material, this is, before was the first melody, this is the second melody. It would be kind of planned if I put both melodies in here at the same time, but the first melody generally takes up the A section. This melody sneaks into the A section and then is the primary point of the B section. So it starts off as kind of a slow piece. There's not a lot of movement because you're just walking, you're not running. That would be, I guess, different if you want to. But it starts off slow, eventually it starts speeding up. And then there will be, it'll speed up, and then there will also be new time signatures. It won't just be for the So the form is generally ABA, but the second A is kind of backwards. It's not the same as the first A. So it starts off in 4/4, and then goes to 5/4, and then we go to the B section, and it'll be a new key, it won't be the same key, and then it'll just be 4/4 that whole time, and then the A section starts in 5/4 and goes to 4/4, so it goes backwards. And that is about it. And now we can hear these.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donald Della Pena, and this is my composition presentation. So that's a little background about myself is I first learned the violin back in middle school in my middle school orchestra, and then in high school I spent 2 years in my high school orchestra. First year as a freshman, and second year as a senior. In between those 2 years, I took music tech, guitar, and AP music theory. I also spent 4 years learning from a private tutor at Sam Ash. Some of my influences include Antonin Dvorak, Hirozaku Ando, and Camille Saint-Saëns. I really like romantic era classical music, so that's why I like Dvorak and Saint-Saëns. And then Hirozaku Ando is one of the main composers for the Kirby soundtracks, along with Jun Ishikawa, and I really like Kirby, so he's also one of my influences. So what me and Dr. Chu worked on was learning orchestration. So to do that, he had me analyze and listen to Stravinsky's Firebird, and from that, I learned that strings have a good backbone for the orchestra, because they don't need to breathe to play, so they can just hold out longer notes and play for longer periods of time. The woodwinds have a more sharper timbre, so they stand out more, which means they get most of the melody most of the time. And then brass has a more powerful, deeper presence, so they have more of the dramatic parts in orchestration. So another thing we worked on was my percussion piece. And the goal was to make a piece with no pitches, with just drum kits and other percussion instruments, such as the gong, cymbal, bass, woodblocks, tambourine, and stomping. And the goal of this was to write more rhythmic motifs and also use form. For example, in this piece, I had a ABA form, which starts A, goes B, and then goes back to A. And then now this is the final thing we're working on is my project piece. When we first started, I wanted to write something jazzy, but I couldn't really write anything jazzy because there's a lot of chord extensions and other stuff, so I couldn't really figure it out that much. So then I just wrote whatever I could. And then for the B section, I wanted it to be more contrasting from the A section. So I made it sound more heroic. And then for instrumentation, Dr. Drew wanted us to all use the same instrumentation. To first find out what instruments we wanted, he had us talk to each other and find out who were our friends who could play in our pieces, and he also wanted us to have a diverse set of instruments, so different family groups of the instruments, so woodwinds, strings, brass, and a piano. And we picked from people who were able to play, so Treya, Ryan, Dr. Drew, and Angelo, and Samuel. And when we first started, we didn't really have our instruments in place. So I originally had a violin, cello, piano, and trumpet. But after that, this was just for ideas. So after that, we switched to the new instrumentation. And then for that, I didn't really have any ideas. So I took a melodic line from Ravel's String Quartet in F major. And then I kind of switched it up a bit. But I also didn't really like that, so I had to change it again. And then I came up with the thing I had. And then for melody and harmony, so for the A section, the trumpet and the saxophone, alto saxophone, play the main melody while the cello and piano play the harmony. And in the B section, it switches. So then the cello and piano play the main melody while trumpet and sax play the harmony. And then I don't really have any music motifs, but there are a lot of rhythm motifs in it. So one of the main rhythm motifs is dotted quarter note followed by a quarter note and a eighth note, and the rest are just variations upon that. for this was the descending fifth chord progression, because it's one of the first ones I learned in AP music theory, and then I really like it. Sounds really nice, I suppose. And then it's a song I like this in is I Will Survive by Dorian Gaynor. And then for form, there's an intro. It introduces Steve with the tonic triad, and then it goes straight into the A section, which is the beginning of the descending fifth chord progression. I started writing the harmony first, and that's how I got the descending fifth chord progression, and then has a more darker vibe. And then the B section, I made it contrasting, so I wanted it to sound more heroic, so I changed it from a minor key to melodic minor. And then in the middle of the B section, it also modulates to the 5 chord, and also changes time signatures from 4/4 to 3/4, or 4/4, or changes from 4/4 to 3/4. No, it changes from 3/4 to 4/4, and I also wrote the melody first, and that's about it.
Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Samuel, and this is my Spring 2025 composition presentation. So before I start talking about my piece, I gotta talk about myself first. So early on in elementary school, I first started with elementary choir. I did that for about 4 years, and then I moved on to middle school. And from middle school, that's when I decided to take on instrumentation. That's when I first started with the alto sax. I was there for about 2 years, and then I moved on to high school, where I did basically the same thing with alto sax. So I was part of the marching band, symphonic band, and jazz band. And then from that period, I ended up switching paths. I didn't pursue music straight on like I did before, and I ended up doing engineering. But I never gave up music. I ended up forming a rock band, and I would sing and play guitar from there. And that's also where I started to write music. As you can see, I'm not an engineer, so things didn't work out. But I decided to come here to fully pursue music this time. So I've been at Pierce for 3 semesters now. This is my 3rd semester taking music classes, and my 1st semester at A&P is also my 3rd semester learning piano, so I'm still fairly new to it. So my musical influences, there's a wide genre, but these are the ones that I really pull from the most. So for like the indie pop scene, I listen to a lot of like Benny, a lot of Frico. I listen to a bunch of Japanese pop, like Tatsuya Yamashita, Bondi, Yoasobi, those things like that. And I also listen to a lot of modern composers. So big example is Kevin Penkin, who wrote the soundtrack for a show called Tower of God. And then there's also Hiroyuki Sawano, which I think most of you might know because he's a composer for Attack on Titan. At the same time, I also listen to a bunch of game music. And I decided to put the name of the game since a lot of them tend to have different composers in it. But good examples are Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. And then of course, legendary Wizard 101, of course. So let me talk about what June and I did this semester. We first started out with talking about rhythm, right? When we have a piece, we want to, well, the focus is rhythm. And so he had me write a piece, just like Angela and Donald, a piece that has no pitch. How do you do that, right? My smooth brain likes to have change in pitches. So the closest thing that I thought would work would be a change in sound character, change in timbre. And so I experimented with having a melody and then just moving it between different instrumentation. And so I can actually show you a snippet of it with this work that I was seeing. And if my sound, I think too, though,
switch it to, does Extron HDMI work in this room? Is there sound that would come out of that? Switch it to Extron HDMI, the second input underneath MacBook Pro speakers. Let's see if that works. Might not.
Sounds great.
Nice piece.
Nice piece.
But yeah, essentially I took that I took a melody and I moved it between drums, the wood block, the triangle, and the tambourine, and just experimented with different timbres and everything. So on to the next part of what we did. Oh, you actually did want to show you guys this. That's okay. So So it was understanding orchestration. So most of the music I wrote before was all like singer-songwriter, guitar, vocals, that kind of thing. So I never really wrote for instruments, orchestration. So one important thing that we did was try to understand the ranges, the weaknesses and advantages of every instrument that we could. And so I present to you my current record sheet. This is the sheet that I go back to when I need to think about where an instrument can be, what it's good at, what it's not, that kind of thing. It's not perfect, but it's still something that I go back to and I will go back to all the time. And in doing that, I was experimenting, and I wanted to experiment with different groupings. That's not the usual like piano and violin or a brass quartet, but that's like the basic stuff, right? I want to try something different. And so fortunately, this one's not working, but I did have one that was a combination of piano, xylophone, and tuba. And listening back to it, it kind of sounds like an 8-bit game soundtrack. I wanted to show you that, but it's okay. I'll move on. Okay, so the main piece that I'll be performing, or will be performing today, is called In the Baron's Castle. So let me talk about the inspiration. Before the semester started, my friends and I were actually in like this grind on this game called Enshrouded. And if you don't know Enshrouded, it's basically this fantasy medieval open world where you can have like different builds and that kind of thing. And so I drew my inspiration from that. It actually came from entering a castle in the area itself. So I wanted to essentially capture that moment of entering this castle and it being like very like ominous and scary, but seeing a bit of like beauty. And so that's how I wanted to stop. So as Angelo and Donald had mentioned before, the instrumentation were alto sax, trumpet, cello, and piano. We wanted to get a grouping of instruments that we can all write for and play in person. And so that's what we have. So for the bonus scene, what I wanted to stand out is I have a melody, and calling back to the rhythm assignment, I kind of wanted to throw that melody or exchange that melody between different instruments and kind of play around with that. And so that's how I came up with that. So let me start giving you a like a snippet of the piece. So here's the introduction. The idea is you're walking in this castle and you're getting this feeling of like dread a little bit. And I actually had a snippet I can show you. Let me look. Gotta look at the Wi-Fi, right? Okay, for now we'll just move on from that. But essentially that's the idea.
Up is here.
Jose, do we know anything about that? The speakers on? Yeah, those two.
Yeah.
Question, please.
While we're waiting, so Lizzie, right? Was there 101? Oh, our recommendations. Okay. Oh, I kind of want to go back to show you, but we'll move on. So this is the introduction. Here's a quick snippet of it. Add melody and then just moving it between different instruments. Alright, next part. So this is the main theme. The motif, if you want to call it. This is basically how I envisioned it was you're still walking through the Baron's castle, but it's more involved. Right? It's pretty simple. I can show you a quick snippet of it actually. Alright, so yeah, so here is now the A2 material. This is basically, we want to stay within the same concept of the A material, the main theme, but we want it to be slightly contrasting, something a little bit different, so your ears don't get bored. And I can show you that. Is the school Wi-Fi listening? So now we move on to the new material. This part, I envisioned it as you're continuing through the Baron's castle. You start to, what's the right word I'm looking for here? You start to appreciate the architecture and the placement of everything, the beauty of everything, but it's still the Baron's castle. You still want it to be a little bit honest. So, I can show you that real quick. Just a snippet, right? Alright. And then, so, let's put it all together, right? Let's talk about the form. The form of the piece is the introduction, the main theme, the A2, the new material, back to the main theme. And some of you may be thinking like, what way did I compose this? Interestingly, I composed the introduction first. You want something to hook on everybody. But then I started composing the new material first, or second. So it's combining two different ideas and then matching them. And then coming up with the main theme and A2 the bridge. So let's hear it all together, right?
Yes. Just doing a little technical stuff before we get started. No, we should. Bear with me, guys. Bear with me. I don't like how sterile it is in here. It's like a hospital. Okay.
I'm not going anywhere.
Hey guys, hello. My name is Evan Clark. This is my composition presentation. That is, in the corner there, that is NBA champion, Jordan Poole. There we go. I'm Jordan Poole, this one's for the baddies. Please do not fail me. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So some things about me: I'm a piano player. Most of my experience is in jazz and improv. Although I do like a lot of different genres. You know, some being in a couple different bands. You know, playing a lot of synthesizers and whatnot. You know, playing with a lot of people. So I also dabble in some classical as well. That was more like last semester's project was a little bit more like theirs. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, which means I'm equally as bad at all of these things. That's nice. And some important moments in my musical life would probably actually be moving through the AMP program. This program has definitely made me a better player, better composer in like every single aspect. So, shameless plug right there, yeah. And also, when I was younger, I actually was in musical theater, which made me discover my love for music, discover my love for songwriting and whatnot. So, you know, these are some of my influences, like Jeff Buckley, who made me want to be a musician. Maurice Ravel, who got me into like more classical composing with his most famous pieces. And Radiohead, you know, pretty much everything that every Gen Z and millennial person loves. Yeah, I love it too, admittedly. I've been listening to a lot of Emoji Steve recently. She's really great. You know, all these influences definitely rub off in my compositions. I think in a couple of compositions I have for you today, you'll see that as well. What Dr. Ju and I worked on this semester, we had a lot of conversations about media comp. You know, we explored those options as well, because before I hadn't scored anything. But we were kind of looking forward, you know, moving on from Pierce, you know, which career path I should go down, you know, which major I should head into, whether it be media comp or regular composition. We talked about how to score something in Logic. He made it very easy for me, which is great. And you know, all the nuances of scoring, such as Dr. Ju playing as a producer, telling me what he might want out of a trailer for a movie. And we also talked about aleatory composing. What is it? How does it work? Is it stupid? Maybe. What it is composing in real time. So it's a lot of improvisatory things happening all at once. The direction of the piece is definitely up to the player. Yeah. So one thing that we worked on was I scored the trailer to Oppenheimer. And what was really good about this experience was I actually had, you know, the actual trailer to compare it to. And Ludwig Göransson did a great job with that film. I really loved it. Except I thought that his themes were very heroic, but this wasn't a hero's movie to me. It was about the creation of a nuclear weapon and all the suffering that caused many people, including Oppenheimer himself. And so in the trailer, there were really two musical themes. There were two characters, which was Oppenheimer himself and the bomb. I characterize it as a feeling of tension, you know, sadness, complexity, and you know, some like sci-fi elements in there with some synthesizers, but mostly acoustic instruments able to convey a sense of tension building up, possibly within Oppenheimer, possibly within the world, kind of reflecting those things. So, unfortunately, I don't know if we'll have time to show the trailer to you guys. So that's it. I have nothing else. I just, oh my god, you should have seen the look on your faces. Okay. I have an inventory piece called Morph. So how it works is a game. And those are sections of the piece, right? And how the game works is there are players with each instrument. The players are given 6 different variations of the same chord progressions. The players must roll a die 3 times in order to acquire 3 different variations to play. The variations may be repeated as many times as they like, but all 3 of the variations must be played. And there's a leader that determines which instruments should be playing at a given moment. And the players must also roll a dice for a rule. You guys are going to love the rules. So Right there, those are two sections of the cello parts. You can see that they vary in theme, whether it be rhythmically, melodically, harmonically. So if you have been invited to play the game, go ahead and step up right now. Get ready. Who wants to roll first? Well, you guys, I'm gonna switch rules. Perfect. So I'm going to show you guys the rules of the game. So pretty much, as I explained before, the players have to play all three rotations, and there is a leader of the game. I will take on the role of the leader today. I can ask of musicians to improvise. I can ask of them to quiet down. I can ask of them to stop playing completely. But mostly I cannot determine, are we losing guys already? I cannot determine what they're going to play at any given moment. I can't say which variation they should play. I can't say how they're feeling in the moment. They have to decide that for themselves. And then we'll talk about the rules. So these are the rules. There are 6 rules. I was going to write more, but the deadline was pretty short. So the rules.
You zoom in on that a little bit. You make that a little bit
yes.
for an old man like me.
Yes, so sorry. Shout out to all old people out there. So, yes, so after you acquire your 3 variations, you do have to roll for a rule. And I'll read the rules as such. Number 1 is take a solo in which your musical vocabulary gets increasingly more out. You can find that as out of the key. Number 2, show the leader this rule. You must recite this poem at one point of the piece. I am a purple banana. I am ripe and ready to eat, so therefore you may have all of me and enjoy every second. Number 3 is you must start the piece with an 8-bar intro. Number 4 is actually angry during the first minute of the piece and see how it makes you feel about your performance afterwards. Number 5 is do an interpretive dance at some point in the piece. And number 6 is stare at someone in the audience until it becomes uncomfortable. So, that one will last as well. Has everyone rolled? Who's rolling? Isaiah? Okay. So yeah, they're just rolling for their variations right now. This is very cool. It's a very cool piece. Jasper, how do you feel about your variations? Do you like them? Do you hate them?
I liked it better than what I practiced yesterday.
Okay, yeah, good. That's good. Who's rolling? What is the next? You done? No? Come on, guys. Efficiency. You good? Okay. So I will roll for my 3 variations now. So we do it right here. So I got 5. Let's say that's 4. And then 3. 5, 4, 3. Okay. Now I'm going to roll for a rule. I got 3, so I have to start the piece with an 8-bar intro. Go ahead. Read what you got.
Do you want to interpret it dance?
All right. What'd you get?
You an interpretive dance?
All right.
I got 1.
Oh, that is, you have to, you take the solo. Okay, cool, yeah.
I got 6.
Oh, so you have to stare at someone in the audience. So he has to say the poem. Did you roll? Go ahead. Oh, so he has to say the poem too. Okay, great. You guys are going to say it together. All right, so that is basically how the piece goes. Perfect. Okay, so I have to start the piece with an 8-bar intro. So that is what I'll do. Oh yeah, what do you need?
Thank you.